But Kudou, you said your next video is gonna be a Weiss trial deck profile. I said probably. I was looking over the set 2 MLP cards out of curiosity, and I noticed something that caught my eye. Brand new main character cards for the main 6. The one that really caught my eye was Twilight Sparkle. I was like, oh, play an event card? Why, that's the easiest flip condition in the world. Oh, but her boosted side sucks. That's the trade-off. And then I started thinking back to set 1 card to figure out a way you could use this, and I thought to myself, wait a second! This is secretly one of the most broken cards in the game! I figured everybody on the internet should be talking about it right now, so I went and I did a few internet searches to see if I could find it, and nobody has come up with the combo yet. So I stayed up all night last night messing around with card ideas and stuff, and I came up with this deck that I'd like to share with you. I'm lovingly calling this deck the Welcome to the Discard Pile deck, aka the Gala is in the Discard Pile deck. Called so because Twilight will be greeting you on your way into the discard pile. This deck will be showcasing my new core idea known as the Pinkie Sparkle Surprise. Called so because Twilight will be acting in conjunction with Pinkie Pie and all of the other pink cards and their sheer destructive dismissal power. I just paid 6 action points to put 5 power on a problem and discard your $25 card before you had a chance to use it. Surprise! Let's get to it. To anyone who just wants to net deck the deck list, here it is, please enjoy. As always, all I ask is that you leave me a like on your way out. For the rest of us, we're going to break it down. Obviously, our main character card is going to be Twilight, and she has a very, very easy flip effect, so she's an easy 3 power early in the game. Despite how easy she is to flip, we don't need to flip her immediately. We need to flip her as soon as we see our opponent start playing problematic cards. The early 3 power does help with Troublemaker face-offs though, and also rush decks. The main combo of the deck is to use this in conjunction with Pinkie Responsibility Pie. You begin by paying 2 action points to move Twilight Sparkle to a problem. You move your opponent's most problematic or most powerful friend to the same problem. Then you play Responsibility Pie, and that friend is immediately dismissed. You now have 5 power on a problem, likely solving it if it's your problem, and your opponent's most powerful friend is dismissed. For 6 action points, it's well worth it. Your second discard engine is Big Top. The combo with him will work like this. Pay 4 action points to move Twilight and Big Top to your problem. If you can pull one of your opponent's friends with at least 4 power to your problem, then you can force them to solve it too. The big difference is because it's your turn and not theirs, you'll be the one getting the victory point and not them. The reason we're aiming for them to solve their problem too is to force them into a face-off. If it's your Twilight and Big Top versus just one of their ponies, chances are you're gonna win. When you win the face-off, you get 1 action point because of Twilight's effect, and you get to dismiss their friend with Big Top. This creates a lockdown that makes it almost impossible for your opponent to keep any friends in play. If need be, you can also pay 4 extra action points to move Twilight back home and then to the problem again to move 2 of your opponent's friends to the problem. The possibilities really are endless. Finally, the last card in the core is the new Snips. I'll come out and say now, I haven't really been a huge fan of the pumped effect, but I think Snips really works for this deck. Every time you win a face-off involving Snips, you can put the card that you flipped for the face-off under him as a marker. And then with his effect, you can get rid of 2 markers and exhaust him to dismiss one of your opponent's friends at his problem. Get 2 markers under him and move him to a problem with Twilight. For 4 action points, you're putting 5 power onto a problem and forcing one of your opponent's most important friends to that problem as well. Then you discard Snip's markers and you get rid of that friend. Snip's effect, while very powerful, is a lot slower than the other 2, so we only run him at 2. Having 2 Snips in play is kinda useless anyway, so we only really want to aim to have 1. We're running 3 Twilight Sparkle All-Team Organizer to help with some of the more expensive cards. Pinkie Pie in particular is very expensive at 4 action points for only 2 power. If we can get just 1 Twilight Sparkle All-Team Organizer into play, then she saves us 1 action point per turn, which is kinda cool. And if you really can't figure out a way to use the action point, then just use it to draw a card. Her effect can never truly be wasted. I would never run a purple deck without Spring Forward. She is by far the most powerful card in purple and one of the most problematic cards in the game. We can even kind of cop out here and run her at 3 because she works with our core so well. If you play her to a problem, then you can put Twilight to her problem to move one of your opponent's friends to the same problem. This gives Spring Forward an immediate +2 power boost. It's really just too good not to run. Lady Justice is in kind of the same place. She works with our core really well because when you use Twilight to move a friend to that problem, then it gets a -1. The ability to force your opponent to play you in a face-off is just too good, and Lady Justice makes it so much better. She also has no color requirement, so if you get her in your opening hand and you wait till turn 2, you can have her in play immediately and unlock all of the purple cards in your deck. Blue Moon admittedly is sort of filler. I feel really uncomfortable only running one purple friend that doesn't have a color requirement. Blue Moon is really never a bad play. It doesn't do anything for our core, but if we play it, then we unlock all of the purple in our deck because of his 2 power plus Twilight's 1. The last card in our purple friends lineup is 1 Tech of Spike. I'm going to say this right now. I think every single purple player needs to figure out a way to tech 1 Spike into their deck. Its effect will win you a lot of face-offs, and it can get very cheesy if you're not relying on pump. Flip a card with like 5 or 6 power for a face-off, and then flip that card for every single face-off for the rest of the game. The great thing about Spike is you only ever really need to run him at 1. He has one of those effects that you don't really need to pull it off because it's not really vital to any deck's core strategy. But if you do happen to pull it off, then it gives you a really great reward with very little cost. Every deck should run 1, but I don't think any deck should run any more than that. Apple Brown Betty is very big. Back in set 1, when everybody else was getting 2 cost for 2 power, she got 3 cost for 3 power. Once you already have it on the field, this makes it a much better card. It also unlocks all of the pink in our deck if we can just get one of these guys in play. We're also running Lily. She does have an effect, so she's better than a vanilla, but I just really didn't pull off her effect very often. I did use it once or twice when I was doing testing to finish the game really quickly and like get rid of a friend who I knew I couldn't move or didn't want to move and give Lily the power and win the game, but that so rarely happens. I mainly play her because she's 2 cost for 2 power with no requirement. We're running 15 event cards for the obvious reason. The earlier we can play an event card, the earlier we flip Twilight. There's really like no creativity in the events whatsoever. It's all the main staples that you normally find in a purple or a pink deck. Vision of the Future is the ultimate face-off winner, and you can recycle it with Spike. Back Where You Began is like an event version of Twilight. It can be used offensively to force your opponent into face-off or defensively to move them away. Its main versatility is in the fact that it can be played during either player's main phase. So if your opponent pays 2 to move a character, you can pay 1, move that character back, and then they have to pay another 2 to move it again. You can pay 1 to play double check the checklist, and then put a card that you'd like to draw, or even a couple of cards you'd like to draw on top, and then just pay a couple of action points and draw into those cards. Just make sure the strongest card stays on top of the stack so that when you go into a face-off, you are guaranteed to get that card. Once again, if you get a good card, then you can recycle that card over and over again with Spike. Downright Dangerous snipes really small, hard-to-get characters. Most of the cards in the game are at 2 power or less, so this will get rid of a lot of things. You can even get rid of something really problematic like a Twilight All-Team Organizer or a Cloud Chaser. Things that aren't necessarily going into face-offs, but they're still giving your opponent some kind of advantage. You could also use this before going into a face-off to give one of your opponent's friends -2 power, so they're more likely to lose the face-off, but you're mainly going to be using it to get rid of friends. Please keep in mind that when combined with Lady Justice, you can get rid of friends with 3 power, just saying. And finally, let's get this party started is the ultimate draw power in the game. You definitely don't want to flip it for a face-off, but if you can get it in your hand, then that extra 3 cards you draw for only 1 action point is definitely awesome. With Twilight All-Team Organizer and the effects of Studious, you should have plenty of action points to spend on extra cards that you draw. This is also a faster way to get to your Big Tops and Pinkie Pies. Even if you already have Pinkie Pie or Big Top in your hand, there's no reason you can't have 2. You'll notice a very distinct lack of a certain kind of event card. Purple and pink don't have a color fixer card. Ugh. I looked for like an hour and I could not find one. I figured maybe I was just missing it, but I'm not. Not having it hurts the core so much, because if you had it, then on the second turn you could play it, flip Twilight, play one of your pink friends, and it would be so good. It would be so good. But alas, I guess Interplay hates me. Technically, I could just run like the purple-yellow one as a proxy and it would still flip Twilight, but after that it would be completely useless because I wouldn't be running any yellow, I'd be running pink. The only resource I'm running is Fighting for Friendship. It helps win face-offs, and it's a really good tech card. If we did have the Color Fixer event, then I would take both of these out along with one of the Double Check the Checklist, and I would put 3 of that in, but this is a good filler for now. In testing, I ran into very few instances where I actually needed to use this card, but the fact that I had it made me feel pretty safe. Lastly, the only troublemaker we're running is Yellow Parasprite. We don't really want to flood the field with troublemakers, we want to be forcing them to go into face-offs with us, and if the troublemaker's there, then they can't face off with us, they have to face off against the troublemaker. You could technically lock your opponent down by playing more troublemakers in the deck and make it so your opponent has to fight against the troublemakers and then force them into a double face-off, and lulz will be had because of Big Top. If you don't know, the new rulings on problem face-offs are double face-offs are also considered problem face-offs now, so Big Top's effect still goes off. Yellow Parasprite is especially good in this deck because you're keeping your opponent's field presence so low that if you can play Yellow Parasprite mid to late game, they won't have any way of stopping it. They'll have no field left because you keep dismissing their friends, and they'll have no hand left because of Yellow Parasprite. It's pretty much good game at that point. The problems really aren't all that special, but I'll take a look at them anyway. We play Adventures in Full Setting because we need some kind of starting problem. We can also use its effect to see what problem we're going to flip next after a face-off. Most of the problem cards we're using take 4 for your opponent to solve, and we did that on purpose. We want them to be able to solve the problems, that way we can run our combos. This is dangerous, but it also works. Mean Meanie Pants lets us draw a card. It also lets our opponent draw a card, but whatever, as long as we get card draw. It is slightly higher at 5 for your opponent to solve, but the 1 power doesn't make all that much of a difference. Ancient Research is one of the best problems in the entire deck. If you put Twilight here, then at the beginning of each of your turns, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. That means if you like the cards you see, you can just pay a couple of action points to draw into them, or you can know whether or not you're going to win a face-off. The best part is your opponent can't use it, which is awesome. I do admit, if you get Spike in play, this card is kind of useless, which is a little ironic because he's the only character on the card. Cheering up a friend is hilarious in this deck. Yeah, come on opponent, just put 4 of your characters here. Nothing'll happen to them, I promise. It's like you're making your opponent do half of the work for you and spending action points to do it. Last card we have is Greeting Lots of Folks with Clout. The cool thing about this card is you can use this effect to move your opponent's main character here if you don't have enough power after moving one of your other opponent's friends to force a face-off. This is especially cool late in the game because chances are your opponent's character will have flipped and you can force it onto the problem to put 3 power there. Then you can move Twilight, move one of your opponent's friends, they'll be solving this problem, and then you can beat them in a face-off and discard one of their friends. It's awesome, just trust me. That is pretty much it for my Pinkie Sparkle Surprise core. The coolest thing about the deck is it is a superb budget deck to get into the game if you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money. The deck doesn't use any ultra rares, and all of the rares it has can be found for a very cheap price. The deck is very easy to build on a budget of about $20. Depending on where you go, of course. It's also possible for the deck to cost as much as $60. Even then, it's not necessarily an awful price, considering just how surprisingly powerful and competitive the deck is. All in all, though, the deck should never cost you this much. It should be about $20. There are a few cards you can look into adding to make the deck a little more varied. The Cloud Chaser engine, for one, is one that you could definitely add. Take out 2 of the Blue Moons and 1 of the Double Check the Checklist. With this plus Twilight Sparkle Ulteam Organizer, you're pretty much going to be playing your friends for free. I tried it out and I do like it, but it doesn't add very much to your face-off winning potential, which is something that I think the deck really needs, which is why I put Blue Moon in instead. Pinprick is another card people will start bringing to my attention, thinking I forgot about it or something. It's a cool card because it's like a really cheap version of Big Top, and it does have an effect that helps our core, but I just don't feel comfortable paying 2 action points to move a 1-power pony around, at least not in this metagame. Right now, with the way the game is, if you're going to have 1 power, you need to have something to make up for it, and since you have to win a face-off to pull off its effect, this doesn't quite cut it for me. It also has a ridiculous color requirement of 4 pink, which means you have to get at least 2 ponies in play that are pink. Overall, this card is just not necessary. If it had one more power or maybe one less color requirement, then maybe, but as it stands, it's not that good. Have your own thoughts on the deck? Then please leave it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, then I ask that you leave this video a like. Those things really do help us out. And finally, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudou news. Until next time, MLP fans.